Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I have another Paul Rubens watercolor review. This is a new product, at least I think it's new. I don't think it has been released before. And the line is, I'll put it here so you can see it on screen. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but it looks like Qiomei. And a viewer of mine said it translates to colorful painting, I believe. And it comes in this beautiful rainbow looking cardboard box. And it's just kind of like a thin, like paperboard, which is unusual for Paul Rubens. They usually send stuff in like these chipboard boxes. This is a set I'll be reviewing soon, but they usually come in these chipboard boxes with a little cloth on them. So this is interesting. It's a little bit different of a format, and so I'm wondering if this is student grade or artist grade paint. On Amazon right now, it's listed at $39.99, and there's a 10% off coupon and another percentage off if you select 2 or more items. So there, you know, it would be less than that. And I know with like Prime Day sales and the different promotions they offer, you can often get their products even less. And I do find that in general, Paul Rubens products are good value for money, and they charge a fair price, if not even better than what you would expect. These are made in China, and we are going to take a look at the back of the box real quick. It's white printing on color, which can be difficult to read. It is not recommended for children under 3. I did look at the pigment information ahead of time on these paints, and they are all I don't like to use the word non-toxic per se, because anything can be toxic depending on how you treat it, but none of the pigments I saw in there were heavy metals or looked problematic whatsoever, so it might be a nice travel set if you're looking to paint plein air and you want to make sure the paints that you use don't contain cadmium or cobalts. So in the box we have the tin. We also have a brochure, and this brochure is all about this, this line of paints. And there's 48 colors in the line, so maybe they'll be coming out with a larger set at some point. That's something I do notice with Paul Rubens, so if you are thinking that maybe you'd rather wait for the larger set to come out, that usually happens like about 6 months after they originally launch a set, sometimes sooner depending on how popular it is. But it looks like this line of paint does have 48 colors. And by the way, Paul Rubens sent this to me to review. I'm on their media list, and when they come out with new products, they generally will reach out and ask if I'd like to review them. So I just want to let you weigh my opinion with a grain of salt if you like to, knowing that I received the product for free. So looking at the range of colors that are available in the line, it doesn't appear that there are any cadmiums or cobalts in this line. It seems to be more of a more of an affordable pigment line, or maybe maybe a less toxic pigment line. So something to be aware of, because a lot of people like to avoid heavy metals in their paints, especially if they're purchasing paint for the elderly or maybe younger people, or maybe beginners that don't really have studio safety down pat yet. And that all the pigment information is there. We have opacity information, and we also have light fast information. I don't see a key as to what their grading scale is for the light fastness, but when I see that, this is my rule of thumb. Whenever I'm seeing a series of stars, I will look for like ultramarine, I will look for burnt sienna, raw sienna, any of those earth tones, because I know the earth tones are going to have the highest light fast ratings no matter what. They're, especially when you look at the pigments like PR101, very light fast, PBR7, very light fast. So I'll look for those pigments, and I'll see what they attribute those stars to. And if it's a 5-star, like burnt sienna's got 5-star, I know, okay, 5-star is the greatest light fast, and I know that like a 1-star would be the worst light fastness. And then I will often go and look at pinks and purples, because purples and pinks generally have lower light fastness ratings, and their purple does have like this one has a 3, that one has a 3. I'm surprised actually those have 3s, because they're using magenta and dioxazine violet as pigments. I would think those would rank up a little bit higher than that. But just scanning through the, you know, they all look pretty good, to be honest. I don't see any of those like really weirdo pigments that you see sometimes, like PR1 or PR9, or, you know, those ones that they use in cosmetics and food products. So the pigments that overall in this range look good. They just look like they're probably not the most expensive pigments, but if they work good and they don't fade, you're going to be good. Not a ton of granulating colors, but this line does have a Mars Black in it. And of course you've got your ultramarine, which is granulating. If you're looking for that type of effect. Sometimes raw sienna will granulate. Just depends on the processing of the pigments. But yeah, nothing here looks like it would be an issue. Oh, they have a Davies Gray, in this line that's a PBK11 and a PW6. I bet that's an interesting looking color. One that we could mix, obviously, if you have a PBK11. All right, so let's get into the actual set that was sent me, because obviously not all of those colors are going to be there. Inspecting the tin, I noticed a little ding right here, and that may be due to the fact that this comes in a thin cardboard box instead of the thick chipboard box they usually come in. This actually was shipped to me in a box. It wasn't in a padded mailer, so I was very surprised to see a ding on the box, but there's a ding right there on the cardboard, so it probably just got dropped. It doesn't bother me because they sent it to me for review, but if you're buying this, especially a tin collector, like I'm a tin collector, if I was buying this for the tin, I would be a little irritated that that was dinged. This reminds me a lot of the Schmincke Academy set they had out a few years ago, and it was like their student grade paint, and it had this beautiful like swoosh of color on it. I don't think it's exactly the same, but it does remind me of that, and that was a tin I've always wanted, so that kind of makes me happy that I have something similar. I actually did paint a couple tins of mine with like alcohol inks to give that a very similar look to that old Schmincke tin, because I thought it was so pretty. I didn't necessarily have to own that tin because I don't really like the Academy colors that much, and I've already bought one of their Academy sets because I love the tin so much, so this is, I gotta draw the line. And I do prefer Paul Rubens paints to the Schmincke Academy line, so that works for me. That works for me a lot. And then we've got the, your basic, just kind of winged out palette. This was slightly up, and I did kind of just gently press it down, and it's holding out nice and level. We have a swatch card, and the swatch card does have the pigment information. 11 of the colors that are listed on this card are single pigment, but I did peek at this, and I noticed my 2 extra colors were ultramarine, which is great, so we get 2 ultramarines. Because this is a 24 color set, but there's 2 additional colors, so they give you 2 ultramarines, and it's set on Amazon, they give you 2 ivory blacks, but luckily they sent me a Mars black instead of the ivory black. So if you have this set, please let me know what your 2 additional colors were, because I would much rather have a Mars black than an ivory black. And if that's a mistake, I'm very happy they made that mistake, but if it's standard, I'm even happier because that means everyone will get a PBK11. And the reason that's nice is it's a granulating color, and it's actually magnetic, so you can hold a magnet under your watercolor paper and you can pull the pigment around, which is really, really cool. I don't recognize these wrappers. These wrappers are different than any of the other Paul Rubens paints that I've used, so I'm thinking that it's probably a new line. And the wrappers, they appear to just be yellow, but then if you look, or if you open them up, you can see it's actually kind of a gradation, that kind of swatch of wet and wet background that they use on the tin, which I think is kind of nice. It just looks kind of boring like this. It looks like they're all just plain yellow, but they're not. So what we're going to do today is we are going to swatch these dry from the palette right onto the swatch card that comes with it, and I've also prepared a swatch sheet right here that I'll stick my labels down to. I want to thank my viewer Afke for giving me that tip so many years ago. I've used it ever since, and we're going to see what we have. And let's get to it. I'll also do a painting, but that will be at a different time, and but it'll be on this video, so it'll. Why do I even say that? It won't make any difference to you. And I also want to apologize if it's noisy in my studio today because I have the door open because I was doing some oil painting earlier, and I'm letting that dry, and I just didn't want to have the fumes. So I think I'll keep this in order. So first we have Chinese White 150. Now that number sounds familiar, and I'm thinking that it might be the same color number as their Meiliang and Qiomei paints. I'll have to check on that when I break for, when I break the video recording to work on the painting, which I will be recording. I'll have a time lapse of it or something. Let's see. And this is PW4, which is your typical mixing white. Oops, you know what? I want to put this up a little higher. These pans, goodness, are not adhesive. Ooh, isn't that pretty? It's it looks like almost like a Naples yellow, but they're calling it flesh color, or maybe even a Jaune Brilliant. So there's a lot of flesh colors. I think you need to be a little more specific. Let's see. That is that's Pale Manor. They could just call it Pale Manor. Pale Manor with a little bit of jaundice, maybe. I don't know. They could call that Lindsay in January. Here we have and that color was PW4 PW6 and PY42, so it's a yellow, ochre, and white. So it does, no wonder it looks like a Naples yellow. All right. This one is, oh, they have the pigment number on both sides because they have one in Chinese and one in English. PY175. What do they call the color? Lemon yellow hue. I'm just trying to make it so I can fit like 8 across there. That is a pretty lemon yellow. These are poured pans. No odor. Well, virtually no odor. I have to basically put this in my nostril to see if I can smell anything. And when I'm putting these back in, I'm pushing the clips in gently so they'll snap the pans in and they won't dance around. This is Cad Yellow Hue, and like I said, there's no cadmiums or cobalts in this line. This is a mix of PY97 and PY65. So as you can, like if you're noticing, if you know much about color pigments, you're going to probably recognize a lot of these colors and realize that they're using pretty light fast colors, so that's good. Light fast and low toxicity colors. That's really nice, because if you do want to have a palette that you can take anywhere and not worry about, you want to make sure, or if your cats get into your studio and try to drink your paint water, you know, can't be too safe. This is Gamboge Hue. Gosh, this is probably pretty boring. Do we like this? Should I skip past it? You know what? I think I'm going to set this up and then I'll talk about the pigments as we swatch them, because my goodness, this video is going to take forever. All right, our paint is all set. I'm actually going to put a drop on of water on the Chinese white, and we're going to start on the next color because, well, the white always takes a little bit extra time to go. So we're going to go into this poorly named flesh color, and it does seem to reactivate pretty well. This is PW6 and PY42. It is fairly opaque there on the Paul Rubens swatch. Add a little bit of water, blend it down. I will do a glaze on top of this. I'm not sure if I'll film it or not. That's kind of a murky color, but I'm not surprised with the titanium white that's in there. Next we have Lemon Yellow Hue, PY175. That the one looks good and transparent. Next we have Cadmium Yellow Hue, PY97 and PY65 in a mix. I'm trying to figure out if these remind me of anything. Let's just add some water and try to... I'll do some gradiated swatches here. Let's do that for the next one. The next one is Gamboge, PY153. I'm just going to wet a block and add the color to it. And let's see how that looks. Ooh, this looks like it's a nice color. They're not very flowy. Quite transparent though, but not very flowy, you know? That is a beautiful color. That actually reminds me of a quinacridone rose. I mean, not a, oh my gosh, quinacridone gold. This next color is Cadmium Red Pale Hue. I'm just going to try a few of these, just wetting the paper and adding the color and seeing if I get any movement. I do like movement in paint, but not everybody does. It's, yeah, I bet there's not any oxgall. I mean, I can't say that for sure, but that's what I would glean from how, oh shoot, why'd I clean my brush? By how much the color just kind of stays where you put it, but it doesn't seem soupy like some Western colors do. This next color, oh, by the way, that Cadmium Red Pale Hue was PY65 and PY, you know, that's a typo. It must be PR255. The next color, Cadmium Red Hue, is PR149 and PR255. Oh, that's gorgeous. That's a really pretty one. You always get a typo in a Paul Rubens product. I think it's kind of like, you know how, I think it was the Amish used to say about quilting, I could be totally getting this wrong, but you never do a perfect quilt because humans are incapable of making perfect things, or something like that. I'm not a quilter, I don't know. This is pretty. This is called Cadmium Red Deep Hue. And like I mentioned before, there are no actual cadmiums or cobalts in this set. That's a really pretty color, a nice cherry red, I would say. It's not even what I think of as a Cad Red Deep. It does seem a little more cherry, but that's probably the PR254. That's PR188, which is like a madder red, and PR254, which is like your cherry red color. That's a pretty color. The colors all look pretty pure, even though they're not all single pigment. There was, including the Mars Black, there's 12 single pigment colors in this set of 26, and I got a duplicated ultramarine, so I'm supposed to get a duplicated ultramarine and duplicated lamp black, but I'm glad I got the Mars Black instead. Next up is Permanent Rose. This is color 502. This reminds me of the Meiliang Pretty Excellent watercolors. I'm wondering if these are the same. I'll have to double check the numbers because it seems to be that same. It's giving me some deja vu. I don't remember the propriety numbers of any paints, but that just reminds me of a color I've seen. 003, Alizarin Crimson. Not that I'd be upset about another Meiliang. Oh, that's gorgeous. PR206. That's a nice permanent alizarin crimson, so you don't have to worry about the PR83 they usually use for crimson. Not they, but in general, that's a traditional alizarin crimson. Next color is Purple Lake, PR88. Oh, that's a nice one. I like that color. I like that pigment. It's like a beautiful mauve. That's a little less pink than what I typically think of a PR88. It is nice. Next up is Cerulean Blue Hue. And that is just PB15. Let's see if that has any movement to it. And you know what? I'm thinking this must have some white in it because that looks like kind of like what these are actually kind of reminding me of the Meiliang. It looks kind of like a sky blue. That seems way too. And when I add water to it, I don't know if you can see that on camera. Let me lift it up. See, as I add water to it, it's gotten a lot lighter. Yeah, that definitely has got some PW4 or something in it. But they don't have to disclose PW4. They do have to disclose PW6, I believe. Because one's more of an extender. But it's not. I mean, it's very transparent, so that's interesting. Or maybe there's just extra binder or other extenders. I'm not sure. Be interesting when we get the glaze done. I'm not seeing any like sediment or anything yet. And I am working on a cellulose paper, a cheaper cellulose paper, decent quality, but you know what I swatch on, just so I can see any of the flaws pretty directly if they're there. The next color we're going to do is Cobalt Blue Hue. And this is Ultramarine plus White. It is PB29, PW5. Why did I just went over the entire... I don't know why I did that. Next one is Ultramarine Blue, and we get 2 of these, which is great, because that's, I don't know about you, that's my most used color. Ah, it's gorgeous. This time I'm not going to cover over. You see they're very close because they both use PB29. I'll be curious about the granulation. You know what? I think I'm going to add a little extra water into these two and see how they granulate. Yep. Oh yeah, that's already starting to granulate, but I'm going to add a little more water. I'm going to add a little more pigment too. Because I want to see what sort of granulation power we get. That might be a little too... This is so puddly. That's going to... That'll probably granulate all right. Next color is Intense Blue, PB15. You might also know this as Phthalo Blue or Winsor Blue, or actually I think Winsor Newton calls this Intense Blue as well. Phoenix also calls it intense blue, but I think that's because I'm pretty sure they make Winsor Newton's common line. Next color is indigo, and that's a mixture of PB15, PBK7, and PB29. So ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, and lamp black, I believe. And where are we? The only colors that really look like they have fillers in them would be the cerulean blue hue and the flesh color. So, oh, that indigo is looking very much like a Payne's gray to me. We'll see if that granulates too. Oh, I forgot to do this swatch. Doesn't that look more like a Payne's gray to you? Let me know in the comments. All right, next up we have sap green. Now usually you'll see tree green on Paul Rubens products for the sap green color, so let's see what this looks like. But you know what? It's color 599. I know I have seen that number for tree green. So I'm thinking this might be the Meiliang paints just redone. It's pretty. I like that color in Meiliang, so I'm gonna have to compare swatches here. That'll be the next part of our sleuthing. Next one we have Hooker's Green Light. Oh, by the way, that sap green was PG36 and PO49. Hooker's Green Light is PB15, PO49, and PG7. This should be a pretty color too. Just going by those pigments. It is a nice color. Let's add a little water to that. Next up, we have Emerald, which is PG7 and PY175. I wish it was just a single pigment, PG7, because then it'd be much more useful. Oops, that's the wrong color. That's the wrong color anyway. Oh, it's nice. I would have preferred just PG7 though. It'd be a little bit cooler and a little bit, well, you know, when you have a single pigment, it's generally more versatile. Now, okay, I'm seeing these boxes, and generally if you have a filled-in box, that means it's opaque, and if you have an empty box, it means it's transparent, and if you have a box with a slash down the middle, that means it's semi-transparent. And these don't seem to correlate with, like, Emerald is definitely not an opaque color, and they've got that as a filled-in box. The Ivory Black, Burnt Umber, and Van Dyke Brown could be. The Cerulean Blue hue, I guess it could be if it had white in it, but it doesn't really look opaque to me. I really don't get it. I think these were all quite transparent, actually. Anyway, that's neither here nor there, I guess, because they didn't put a key in telling us, well, I think I must set it somewhere. I don't know. But generally that's what that symbol means. Alright, anyway, moving along. Get off my lawn. This looks so much like Winsor Newton's Burnt Sienna, which they also use a PR101, and that's what we got here. It's a very orangey Burnt Sienna, which used to really bug me, but I have to say now, as long as I have like a Van Dyke Brown or a Burnt Umber, I don't mind having the orangey Burnt Sienna, because you can still add a little blue to it and desaturate it further. Now we have Raw Umber, which is not a color I often use, but I'm thinking about using that mixed with some greens or blues to make some different sorts of greens. So I was looking through my brown stash, and I had quite a few tubes of Raw Umber, probably because they came in a set, or I, bought them in a lot and never used them. So I would like to find some ways to really use that Raw Umber a little bit more. And that is PBR7 and PY42. The next color we have is Van Dyke Brown, PR101 and PBR7. I like Van Dyke Brown. Ah, so rich and chocolatey. Look at that. And I feel like earth tones in Paul Rubens paints, or actually any Chinese-made paints, can be kind of hit or miss. Or even, I even find browns in like Eastern European brands to be kind of hit or miss too. They either, a lot of times they're weak, honestly, or weird, weak or weird. It must be like what's available for pigments in that region. Now we have Burnt Umber, which is weird. This is one, Burnt Umber generally is PBR7 just on its own. This one is a mix of PY42, which is yellow ochre, and PBR7. That's pretty. I'm wondering if it's going to get kind of murky. It does look like it might be a little bit murky. It's a beautiful color. I like the Van Dyke Brown a little bit better, but it looks like that might be a nice color. But it might be kind of opaque and it might lead to muddy mixes. So if you're a beginner, just be aware of that color. You might want to use one of the other browns until you're a little more comfortable with keeping your colors clean. And then we'll have our two blacks. We've got ivory black right here. Whoops, you know what? I didn't pinch my... Oh well, I'll have to do that after it dries. We've got our ivory black here. And I just kind of snuck in a little spot for the Mars black. And the Mars black, I'm going to have to swatch somewhere else. Actually, you know what? I'm going to swatch it up where the Chinese white is because I don't need to swatch white. Not in that little card. So let's, I'm going to wet a little area because I want to see that granulation in the Mars black. I put a little magnet under that pan. And the extra ultramarine I'm just throwing in my stash of ultramarine I haven't used yet. So, oh, you know what? Why don't we grab a magnet and see if we can make that pigment move a little bit. Oh, let's do that. I got a magnet right here. Oh boy. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Can you see it? I wonder if I can pop the magnet out of there because that's kind of cool. I wish I could get the magnet out of that though because it's shoot, I don't think I can. I have another magnet in here. Oh, what sort of treasures do I have in this place? Yep, I have all kinds of magnets. I don't know if they're strong enough though. They're kind of lumpy. Oh, look at that. Can you see the pigments moving around? Huh. That's cool. And of course it doesn't work with regular black, but that's just kind of cool. Oh, and you can see the texture already happening in there, that beautiful granulation. That's neat. All right. And now I'm going to put a nice juicy swatch of that where the white is on this card because I don't need to. I'm just going to cross that info right out. I'll just made a note in there. And let's give that a try. There, we'll let that dry. Oh, beautiful granulation. I love it. That's so fun. But anyway, look at this. Look at that texture. That texture is beautiful. That's wonderful. I feel like I want to put a little bit more paint in there and see what it will do. I don't have that much space there, but I kind of wish I had a little bit more pigment. So that was an exciting little surprise there. We'll let that dry. All right, so we've got a pretty good assortment of colors here, but I've got to go find my Meiliang swatches and see if these are the same because boy, some of those pigment numbers really seem familiar. Oh my gosh, look at this. Look at that Mars black already doing its thing on that cotton paper. And this is a pretty smooth, like hot press paper. That's going to be exciting to play with. So let me go see what I can find in my other swatch bin and I'll be right back. Well, you know me, I did a little digging. And these appear to be the same pigment information and color numbers as the Qiomei watercolors. So even to the names and the pigments used. Like for instance, color 599 in Meiliang is called tree green, but it is sap green in the Qiomei watercolors. Here you can see in the Meiliang, this is the 599. The thing I found with the Meiliang versus, especially the tube colors versus the Qiomei watercolors is the Meiliang, even though they had the same numbers in some colors, they were a little bit murkier or grittier. So, but I don't know why they recycle the numbers, but I did ask my rep about that at the time when I was trying to figure out why the Qiomei colors and the Meiliang colors shared so many numbers, and they said that the Qiomei is a higher grade of paint. And it did seem to bode that way when I looked at my tests. But, so I'm looking at this is where I have all the pigment information. I actually have a swatch of the Qiomei watercolors here where I did the tubes and the pan side by side, and I wrote down the pigment information. Actually, that one's easier to read than this, than that like little sleeve that went on the box. But we can go through and we can see. So if you have the Qiomei watercolors, I think this is the same thing. So you may not want to buy it again, or maybe you do because you like the tin and you'd like more of that paint. Or at least you know that you could get the tube set and you could refill many of these colors. So anyway, if we're looking through of what is in the, what of these new colors are the same as in the old Qiomei set, we have the, oh, I never did swatch that white, but we have the Chinese white color 150, which uses PW4, same in both lines. We have the lemon yellow hue, they're both PY 175. Now color 346 is actually also in the Meiliang set, but that they use PY3, which is a little less light fast than the PY 175, which I thought was kind of interesting that they would have done that. Although I have to say this Qiomei looks a little bit different than the one I have there, but I haven't done the mass tone swatches yet, so that could be why. And then 119 is PY65, PY75, and then we've got 19. Do we have 119? No, we have 109. So I guess there's not that many. I think there are a lot of similar colors, but not all of them. So 109, PY97, PY63, same thing right there. Then we've got 266 Gamboge, PY153, PY153, 103 is 103, that is also PY65, PY2, same typo, PY255, the same typo is on the box here. I corrected it there, but it's the same typo right here, PY255. So I think it's the same, and plus it seems to be painting out about the same. But not all the colors are identical, obviously, but a lot of them are. That one is, those two, those two, those two, that one, 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 that one. So more are the same as not the same. Well, obviously there's 2 more colors in this. No, actually, there's 1 extra color in this than not that. So what does this one have? This one has the flesh color, and this one has let's see. This one doesn't have 346, and that one has 346. No, it does 346. Okay, Qiomei has a color called it's 119. It's called Cadmium Yellow Pale Hue, and the new set from Paul Rubens doesn't have Cadmium Yellow Pale. They've got Lemon and then Cadmium Yellow Hue. So that's a difference. And then it must have, maybe that's it. Maybe it just has yeah, maybe that's it. Instead of having the Cadmium Yellow Pale, it's got a flesh color. I think that's the only difference. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Really? Yeah. So if you like the Qiomei watercolors, this is about the same thing, except it's got one of the yellows is different. Wow, that's crazy. But I double checked all the pigment information. All the pigment information is the same. So I think that's what we have on our hands here, is the same as the Qiomei watercolors, which is kind of like, I would say, in between the Meiliang and the regular Paul Rubens artist grade watercolors. So I'm going to do just a little glazing swatch on each of these, just so we can see the mass tone of each of the colors. It's the color in full strength. Suppose I ought to swatch that white while I'm at it. It's not super opaque because it's a PW4, which is not an opaque white. And look at the dent. Look at the dent that drop of water in there made. So, I mean, what that will be used for would basically be if you wanted to lighten up the color but you don't want to change the viscosity of it or make it too much more opaque, that's what you would use that for. I don't think it's super, it's not the handiest thing unless you're painting something that's very, you want very pastel-y and you want to be able to control the paint really well. Sometimes it's handy in portraiture, honestly, to get a really nice, like a creamy, easy to blend complexion tone. This might be a little thick to do, a little wide to do mass tone swatches. The more opaque a color is, the less difference you'll see in a mass tone swatch. So that's interesting. I might have to do a little swatching side by side because I didn't think that, I thought the Qiomei had a little bit more movement in it than these did. That's a gorgeous color. I love how transparent that is. And that's one of the reasons I do these reviews, because nobody wants to buy the same thing over and over again unless they love something and then they're like, oh, I wish I could get that product again because they've stopped selling it on Amazon and it's hard to find. And it's like, oh, well, you can actually just buy this one instead. So I feel like I'm saying so a lot. I apologize. Every once in a while, you know, you pick up some like sort of verbal bad habit, and I feel like that's my new one. I notice that when I'm talking on the phone. Let's see, what did I just do? I think we're at this one. This is a beautiful color, Permanent Rose. Love that color. Got a madder red, or a alizarin crimson hue, I should say. I wonder what they have that a 4-star light fastness rating. It's more light fast than PR83, which is your typical. Oh, actually no, that's PR206. I thought that was a PR188. It really looked a lot like that. That's actually quite that's got that really has that alizarin crimson look. A lot of the hues don't look so bloody, but alizarin crimson does have a real bloody undertone to it, and that kind of has that. This color here, I'd have to mix that down. That's kind of obnoxious on as it is. That color, when I was a kid, I used to have this dress that was that color, and I remember one day I was on a car ride. I never really liked to go on car rides as a kid, and I always got bored, so I was sitting in the back seat of the car and I was coloring, and I had a dress on that color, and I felt so nauseous. I didn't get car sick like to throw up, but I felt so nauseous, and it's like whenever I see that color now, I just think of nausea. Isn't that funny how you can have those connotations? So that was the cobalt blue hue. I'll be curious to see if any of these are shiny in mass tone. Sometimes they do. I'm thinking I've got to go look back at the mass tone swatches I did of the Qiomei, but the Meiliang I would get some gloss in a really thick mass tone. But actually I had to say that the Qiomei and the Meiliang really aren't that different. You know, they're very similar paints. The Meiliang are quite a bit cheaper per color. I didn't really notice as much of a quality difference until I compared tube to tube of those two lines. I thought in the pans they were very similar, but the pigment numbers are different. On some of the same color numbers have different pigment codes on them, and I don't know if that's accurate or what. I'll have to compare the Meiliang colors. Wow, look how dark that is in mass tone. That's crazy. I still like them better than Schmincke Academy, so I'm glad they have this pretty tin. I don't think Schmincke Academy's bad. I think in America, it's just overpriced. It's probably not in Germany, or the rest of Europe for that matter, but it is in America, so. It's why I'm always, when people say, what paint should I get? I'm a beginner, what's the best deal? And it's like, where do you live? Look what's local, because your local paint companies are probably going to give you the best value. And plus, you're supporting your local economy, so that makes a little bit more sense. Oh, that color's pretty. They do dull down a bit when they dry. I can't imagine glazing much in either of these blacks. Oh, I forgot to tighten that one in. I suppose you could. I'll have to, maybe if that one would probably lift a lot because it's very sedimentary, but the other one might not. You might be able to use it like a neutral tint or something if you wanted to do a grisaille and then paint over it. Probably would be kind of muddy, but... And there we have our mass tone swatches. We could also try lifting. You can see if a color, some colors should just lift and be non-staining. Some colors should stain because that's the properties of the pigments they use. So we can see if colors behave as expected. With how many lines of paint that Paul Rubens has, I kind of think some of them have to be duplicates. You know what I mean? So let's see, what's a color we know will lift? Ultramarine blue should lift. So let's try that one. Try not to get into any of the... And it does. It lifts up exactly as I expected. What's something that shouldn't lift? Phthalo blue. So something like an intense blue, that shouldn't lift. That should stain. So it might lift a little bit. Oh shoot, but it shouldn't lift a lot. So let's try that. Oh, well, that's actually lifting. That actually lifted pretty good. There is a stain left behind, but I'm surprised at how well that lifted. Let's try another color. Reds can tend to stain. Let's see. What's a pigment on that one? PR168, PR254. Let's see. I don't know off the top of my head how staining those are. That lifted pretty good. Let's try our purple. That's staining. Generally purples stain. Let's try this permanent rose. It's a quinacridone. That should have some staining. So why isn't it staining as much? This is a cellulose paper, so it might have a little bit more of a sizing than a cotton paper. It could be there's extra fillers and extenders. A lot of times student grade paints don't stain as much because of the extra fillers in there. It makes a barrier with the paper. Let's try this one here. PB15 should stain like that one. But this clearly has an undisclosed white in it. They're lifting pretty well. That phthalo green should not be super lifting. Let's try that. That's a little bit staining, but honestly, it's lifting pretty well. So I'm thinking there's probably, there might be a little bit of extra filler in there that's keeping the cost down low. But then again, this is $40. It's not super cheap. It's about the same price as a student grade set, I guess. I've gotten so used to Paul Rubens stuff just being very inexpensive anyway. So there we have our mass tone swatches. I don't know what to think. I think this is very similar to the, if not identical to the Qiomei set, but let's look at our other colors while we have them. I've got a lot of swatches here. So this is, I got a wet oil painting, like I gotta make sure I don't set anything on it. This is one of the more recent sets of pretty excellent paints. The 52 set, the most recent 52 set they came out with. I find their pan sets to be very smooth. I don't get a lot of grit or filler, but if I look at the tube set from them, that does have more grit and filler in it right here. You know, like you can see this grittiness, and like that color is a color that we see in the or that number anyway in this new set that we were looking at. And if I compare those two colors, like right here, we've got that color 103 and this color 103. You can see that's more intense. It's more sheer. There's none of that flocculation in the wash. It's a much nicer looking paint. So I don't think it's the same quality as a Meiliang tubes anyway, but it seems quite similar to the pans. Do I not have a swatch of the pans? This one is the Meiliang versus Qiomei. Actually, this might be handy. This is the Meiliang versus Qiomei tubes. So we can see, so that's 346, and these two are both 346. That's Qiomei, that's Meiliang. Actually, I think the Meiliang looks closer, but I know that pigment's not the same. 109 That's 109. It looks more like the Qiomei, which is the slightly more expensive one. 103, that looks more like the Qiomei. 502 looks more like the Qiomei than the Meiliang. 003, it looks more like the Qiomei than the Meiliang. How can you cross-reference these? That one doesn't really look like either. That 544, the new color looks almost like it's got something else in it. Like this looks like your typical kind of mauve. That one looks like it's got like a fluorescent to it or something a little strange. I don't have one of those black light flashlights to test for fluorescence. 139, that's 139. This is in the Qiomei or the Meiliang. It looks more like the Qiomei. 179, it looks more like the Qiomei. 660, boy, those are both very pretty. I can't really tell. I feel like those both look more intense than that, but it could just be the paper that this is on. They're both cellulose, but this is a little bit bigger of a size, so I think it's definitely a different brand. Indigo, hard to tell. I think it looks more like the Qiomei. Let's see, we've got 327. Is that a color we have? 327 right there. Looks a little bit more like the Qiomei. Yeah, I think, and then 599, probably more like the Qiomei. 314. This looks better than both of those. Both of those look kind of scaly, but I think that's because these were both tube. These were the tube versions of those paints. But I had them side by side, so I figured that'd be an interesting cross-reference. This one, again, doesn't quite look exactly like either of them. It looks like the same color, but this is smoother, I think, because it's a pan. I think Paul Rubens does pans better than tubes, maybe sometimes. At least in the more student-grade versions. It's 676. Do we have that one right here? It looks a little bit more like the Qiomei makes. It's a little bit cooler undertone. The Meiliang's a little bit warmer undertone. But there's some comparisons. I don't know if that's useful, but I think quality-wise we're looking at like the Qiomei watercolors, maybe a step above Meiliang, but not quite to the Paul Rubens artist grade paint. I'll have to get the artist grade swatch too and just compare after this is dry to look. So let's wait for this to dry and then compare there, and then I'll show you finished artwork, and then we'll wrap up this overly long, detailed review of a $40 paint set. I just compared the color numbers to my Paul Rubens. You can kind of see the quality difference in the Paul Rubens. This is their original artist grade set, and the colors are not the same. I'm not seeing similar pigment codes. I'm not seeing any of the same pigment numbers, and there's different quality to the paints here, where you've got a much more variety of like cobalt granulating colors, and the colors have a little bit more personality than I see in their typical Meiliang or Qiomei watercolors, and none of the numbers overlapped, and that's really wanted to check. I wanted to check if they recycle the same numbers in the artist grade lines versus the student grade lines, and no, they don't. So that also makes me furthermore think that this is a student grade set, because it corresponds with their other more student grade numbering systems. Now, I didn't see I didn't see any overlap between the original Paul Rubens watercolors and the new Yulan watercolors that they recently released as their like 4th or 5th generation pans. So that's interesting. It seems to be they're separating those lines out pretty well, but these lines all seem to be very, very similar, which makes me kind of wonder if they do their artist grade paints in-house, and maybe they have maybe the Meiliangs are made in a different factory, or maybe even from a different company, because I do think they private label some of their products, like their pastels and whatnot. I don't have any 100% like proof of that, but with the similarities of the Meiliang and the Qiomei watercolors, and then this new set, I'm thinking that maybe it's either a different division or something. I think they're all wonderful paints and good for the price, but the detective hat is on, and I'm just trying to figure out a little bit more about this particular paint. Interesting. Well, I'm gonna have to do a painting with these and see what I think, and then report back, see how different they are from the other paints I mentioned, and let you know the lowdown, what I think, if I recommend these or not. Stay tuned. Alright, I did this painting in my sketchbook, and everything went fine. I did use a little mixed media. Since it is Inktober, I used some fountain pens and a little pen there to do a little bit of the kind of glazing on top. And I sketched in with a watercolor pencil, so it wasn't all just the Paul Rubens paints, but they behaved as expected. They flowed fine. They weren't like a super flowy paint. I wanted to show you the mixing area because there is, the paint did bead up on it quite a bit. And if you watch the tutorial, which will be out by the time this review goes up, you can see that. Let's clean this up and see how the paint, if the paint stains. And there is some staining, which I kind of expect because I did use the intense blue, which is a phthalo blue, and I used the emerald green, which is a phthalo green, so I would expect the blue and the green to stain. And I wouldn't be surprised if the rose stained because it was a quinacridone, I believe it was a quinacridone color. I think it was PV19. Let me just see. PV19, yeah. So, I mean, if I had some red staining, that would not be the biggest surprise in the world. I get a little bit, mostly just blue and green staining there. And I imagine if I, wash this with detergent, I would get most of that out and the paint would not bead quite as badly. Now, one thing I did notice here when I took my, when I took the tray out is there was some paint scraped off the bottom here. So if you're going to use that, I mean, it's yeah, with the raised areas, there are some paint scratches there, so that could rust. Just want to be aware of that. Maybe hit that with a little nail polish. I'm seeing quite a few little spots. Is that actually, that might just be paint. That paint or is that bare metal? I guess that's just paint, so that's alright. But there is some bare metal on the bottom. So, just be aware of that. Maybe touch it with a little nail polish. Seal it up if that concerns you. Especially if you like to spray your palette. Although, it's probably going to not get too juicy in the metal there, mostly on the sides. But overall, I think this is a really cute little set. It would be a nice gift. There's no cadmiums to worry about as long as the information is correct. But it seems to me to be equivalent to the Qiomei watercolors that came out 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. Which are fine. They're a little bit better than the Meiliangs, not as good as the Artist Grade. I think you're going to pay $40 for this, though, unless you absolutely want that tin or these colors and you don't want cadmiums. I think you're better off going with the traditional old style of the Paul Rubens Watercolors 24 set, just because they do, it really depends on what you want. I like cadmium colors just because they are kind of tried and true, a little more light fast. It's really up to you what you want. I think there was more single pigments in their original set of 24. That's the Artist Grade, especially when you're talking about the same price. But again, it's up to you. If you don't want cadmiums, go for this. I can't blame you if you're buying it for somebody else. I love the PBK 11, but I don't know if that's going to come in everyone's set because it's not listed on the Amazon sale page or on the brochure here. It said that you're going to get an extra ivory black and an extra ultramarine. So I think that might be a mistake. If that was included, I'm like, that's really cool, but I'm not so sure it is. So that's why I wanted to ask if anybody else bought this set or got this set into review. Did you get a PBK 11 or did you get another PBK 9? I'm just really, really curious about that. But I think it's worth the money. But with Paul Rubens, they're well priced. They're well priced paint, and I do think their original set of 24 is a little bit higher quality. But I don't think this is bad either. And, I mean, I know a lot of people want to buy it for the tin because the tin's really cute. So, there you have it. I hope you found this useful. And you can find the tutorial for this on my YouTube channel if you're so inclined. It's a real-time narrated tutorial, so you can paint right along with me using whatever paint you have. If you have these, great. If you don't, use what you have. That's obviously my motto. Thank you so much for watching. Give me a thumbs up before you go. And until next time, happy crafting. Bye!